Hello, 501. Happy Tuesday. Long weekend, Labor Day. I hope you all did something enjoyable. Um, it's an excellent holiday in the world of social work. I sent out a link with some articles. I hope you all had a chance to read those. I don't think anybody generally talks about the meaning behind Labor Day. It's one of those things where we just barbecue and enjoy a day off of work. But it's actually a day off of work off the backs of hardworking Americans, and a lot of social work history there with the labor movement. Fascinating stuff. So, anyways, I hope you all had a chance to read some of those brief articles that I sent out. Speaking of articles, this week coming up, week 4 wrap up, by the way. This week coming up, one of your readings is the Daniel Keating article on nature and nurture. The author is Daniel Keating. Um, it's wrapped within a series, so don't let the author throw you off if the names are different in there. But some folks in the past have told me that they feel like the article is pretty challenging, that it is a little on the academic side, but that's okay. You're academics. This is grad school, and I think that y'all get through it. So just muddle through it, even if some of the language is kind of difficult, and see what you can pull from it. I think some of the information on there on nature, nurture, and twin studies is extremely valuable and interesting. If you have questions on that, feel free to post them up on Blackboard. Excuse me. Okay, so I want to talk about, speaking of Blackboard, I want to talk about the Blackboard question this round, social exchange theory. Some of you all had some really interesting thoughts, sharing your feelings on social exchange theory. I find it to be a really fascinating topic, the whole concept of altruism and social work, and very connected to why some of us get into the field. Um, I don't know, personally, I don't know if I believe in altruism. We do things for other people. We get something from it. We feel good about ourselves. We feel good about the world. That's okay. I guess that's the way that I see it. Is that I actually think social exchange is okay, and at the basis of how we're connected with each other. Where Aristotle, the philosopher, the Greek philosopher, talks about the socio-political, the political animal. That's what we are. We define ourselves through each other, and I feel like defining ourselves through helping each other is perfectly okay, even if it's not altruistic in the academic sense of the word. So, anyways, interesting conversation. Thanks to you all for sharing your stuff and being willing to engage in conversation on that. So week 3 that we just finished up, just finished grading all your quizzes. They were really good. Y'all are 90% spot on. The only things that I'm marking down, just so you know, are things where you're not putting enough. There were some folks who put, define resiliency, and they put the ability to bounce back, period, which is true, but there's a whole lot more, because we're talking about defining resiliency in the academic sense within the social work profession. Okay, so please expand on that. There's a whole lot to be said about resiliency and the resiliency study, um, all kinds of things that we utilize and practice on resiliency in therapeutic work as well, looking at kids and development and things that we need to concentrate on putting in place in order to statistically up the chances of um, kids and families succeeding in life. Huge topic, fascinating thing. I could talk about it for hours. What else do we got? Conflict theory. We talked about that. The person and environment, the pie concept, a huge one too. I think you all grabbed onto that pretty well. Somebody in one of the quizzes had mentioned that they felt like pie was underlying social work as a profession. I think I might have leaked that out earlier, but I absolutely agree with that. As a professional, we look at the person in their environment. It's what we do. Also ties to the question that we had answered earlier in looking at psychology versus social work. So the person and environment, you're studying this person, okay, but you're studying them within their environment. Hence this class, which sums things up really well. You'll hear about that many times in your upcoming classes in social work. Week 4 coming up here. I mentioned the Keating article. in the PowerPoints as well, really take a look at the twin studies and the nature nurture piece. It's fascinating stuff. Um, Really, the fundamental thing that I want you all to be coming to is moving past the nature nurture debate. It's interesting academically to engage in it and say, was this a nature thing? Was this a nurture thing? Um, is this, genetically speaking, was this person destined down this path? Things along those lines, or did the environment of this particular child shape them into the sociopathic adult that they became? Things along those lines, which are really applicable when you look at things like legal issues and court sentencing. Big plug for mental health professionals to be working with our court systems there. Um, so anyways, what I want you all to be getting to is moving past the nature nurture debate, and to what I see as the answer to it, which is that it's not nature or nurture. It's never one or the other. It's always both. Okay, and that's something that we call reaction range theory, which I think that you are all probably saw in the slide. So reaction range theory is a huge concept in looking at propensities, okay? Looking at the fact that every person has a certain degree of nature within them, which can be triggered by nurture, by environmental factors, okay? Look at things like diabetes, for example. Diabetes, certain people, every person has a range of propensity towards diabetes, okay? Now, whether or not they end up exhibiting those traits, okay, is triggered by what they eat, okay, and what things along those lines, and the way that their body is taken care of. Hence the nurture piece of it, the environmental factor, okay. So you've got your action, reaction, your nature, your nurture, reaction range theory. So huge concept there, interesting stuff. I'd love to talk to you all more about that. The other thing I want you paying attention to is small groups. A really, really cool thing about small groups theory is that not only are small groups a huge piece of what we do in social work when you're looking at things like therapeutic groups, okay, processing groups, you've got curriculum-related groups, substance abuse groups, things along those lines. Substance abuse groups is an interesting one. Do some research on substance abuse groups with kids. It's huge. We do it all the time. I have them at my center. They're not necessarily that effective, quite frankly. I think that a lot of the research out there says that kids doing substance abuse groups tend to do worse than they would have if they weren't in the groups, and it makes sense because, it's a good place to network and make friends who have and do drugs. So something that systemically I've always kind of thought we need to rethink. A lot of people agree with me on that. Anyways, back to small groups. Small groups are interesting because they not only are they a thing that we utilize in social work, but they are also a huge piece of what we look at and pontificate on to sort of move towards proving macro theory. Macro theory are notoriously difficult to prove because there's too many variables. It's too big. But we look at small groups as a microcosm, okay? And we look at small groups and interchange in small groups as a means of looking at larger trends in social interaction that we can utilize then to expand out, theoretically speaking. So, interesting stuff. Okay, some housekeeping stuff. Your final paper, y'all should definitely be doing your interviews right about now. If you haven't, you should be getting them done this week with your ASQs. Hopefully everybody's got their target picked out. The question came up a couple times that I wanted to address. Folks asked me, can they do their own kids? Can they do close family members? I'm telling you right now, I really would prefer that you didn't. Otherwise, you're not really doing an interview. Okay, and a big piece of the write-up that you're going to be graded on and looked at with is whether or not you did a quality interview for the sake of the project. you can't do a quality interview with yourself. You can't do a quality interview with your significant other. Okay, things along those lines. So find a kid, find a family, somebody you don't know that well to interview. If you need help, reach out to me, reach out to your classmates. We can probably help you out there. There's plenty of kids around and folks who'd be willing to sit down with you. Outside of that, next week is the midterm. Be studying up on that. Again, the midterm is not covering, it's not comprehensive in so much as it's going to be focused on root cause analysis on biopsychosocial. So I'll be presenting you with specific situations where you'll have to look at that, do a root cause analysis, and kind of decide where in a biopsychosocial assessment you would place that particular event or that piece of information. So more to come on that next week. I think that's all I got. Thank you all very much. We'll chat next week.